across Queensland. Good evening. Across the nation, thousands have gathered to honour the ANZAC spirit. Over the past 2 years, COVID put a pause on traditional services, but today, a return to pre-pandemic numbers. Yes. The Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, among the dignitaries and diggers here in Brisbane CBD.
A bugler echoes the sacred notes. The last post. It signifies the end of a day's activities, but this morning it also marked a return to tradition.
I think it's been special since we've come out of this horrible COVID pandemic thing.
At Brisbane's Shrine of Remembrance, ANZAC Square, the age-old dawn service. The ceremony commencing at 4:28 a.m. sharp, the exact time the Anzacs approached the Gallipoli beach in 1916.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow.
The Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, and the Governor, Dr. Jeanette Young, joined the thousands that packed a wet Adelaide street. Today is the most sacred day in the nation's calendar, and for many, 2022 service has been the most significant in recent memory. After 2 years of COVID restrictions, finally, our returned servicemen and women can be together once more.
It's good to see the numbers increasing again, and despite the weather.
It's always emotional, always. Never fades.
In pre-pandemic times, close to 600 services would commemorate the Gallipoli landing around Queensland. Today, it's back to 500. Peter Fegan, 9 News.
The bad weather didn't deter crowds on the Gold Coast today. Thousands turning out to dawn services and continuing on to RSLs and bowls clubs. Charlton Hart is at the Southport War Memorial. Good evening, Charlton. Commemorations, I'm thinking, have rolled on throughout the day.
Yeah, they certainly have, Andrew, and they're continuing now. It's you can really feel that ANZAC spirit shining through here on the coast. We've had a number of dawn services throughout the day, including here in Southport, where countless families, veterans, friends, and even tourists showed up to the sound of gunfire and also flares. It was a really touching tribute to honour the service and sacrifice of our Australian and New Zealand troops. Even some of our younger citizens turned out to mark the date.
It's very good to remember people who went to war.
We always go to the ANZAC Day service in Adelaide, so we thought while we're here we want to do the same thing. And our father was served in World War II.
And the spectacle didn't stop there. An Australian Defence Force jet dazzling crowds near Palm Beach with that low-level flyover. And of course, what would an ANZAC Day be if you couldn't go to a pub and wash it down and have a game of two-up? The crowds definitely got pretty rowdy here across the Gold Coast throughout today, including at the Southport RSL. Andrew, that party is continuing tonight. Hopefully a few of them don't have sore heads when they wake up tomorrow.
I think there might be a few, but happy as well. Good on you, Charlton. Thank you. Well, Queenslanders turned up in droves for today's ANZAC Day parade in the city. Thousands, both old and young, passionately marching through the streets in honour of those who served for our country.
The ANZAC Day March, a parade of military pride and mateship.
I love it. It's so exciting meeting everybody, and it's a real thrill, the memories and all the rest of it, meeting friends that you haven't seen. I know, I love it.
Time taking its toll on veterans, but not their resolve to be in the parade.
First year in the vehicle, at 92 years of age, I just couldn't keep up with it.
The remaining World War II veterans forced to watch the crowds from inside a taxi. This is Jackie Kettlewell's 37th ANZAC Day parade. Her grandfather fought in Africa, before being taken as a POW.
The scars that they hold and the things that they endured, a lot of it's, hard to fathom.
The riderless horse commemorates the fallen soldier, most notably the mounted brigades that fought for Australia during World War I. And whilst those that served then are no longer here, its enduring placement in the parade shows we'll never forget. Like Commando Mitchell O'Hara, who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I'm marching for my big brother and Aoife's dad.
He was diagnosed with PTSD and sought treatment, but couldn't shake the mental scars.
You miss Dad?
And their families.
Yeah.
Many fallen soldiers missed, but never forgotten. Shannon Marshall McCormack, 9 News.
Dawn drive-wave services are back, cementing themselves as a new ANZAC tradition, driven by the community for the community. Hundreds have stood shoulder to shoulder, sharing stories of service and sacrifice in their suburb.
Under grey skies and showers, they huddled close, standing in silence, a sea of umbrellas at Alderley, flames flickering from candles, not a dull driveway in sight, decorated with poppies before dawn. The custom call of an old ANZAC ritual mixed with new traditions driven by the community.
A lot of us have been here for a long time, and generationally we all know mothers, brothers, cousins.
And this is a neighbourhood that does it well, snaking around the street, families, children, servicemen and women turning out to light up the dawn.
It is intimate, it's very personal, it's really good to share with your neighbours.
Hand-delivering homemade ANZAC Day biscuits.
Best seats in the house. Everyone comes to you.
Wearing his family's war medals, Greg Clark full of pride.
I'm a grandfather, so my grandfather fought in the First World War.
Sharing stories of soldiers on their street. 88-year-old Brian Brevedier remembering his father's service and the war that shaped his childhood.
I'm a war baby. I was born in 1941, so he went away to the war when I was only a baby, and then he came back when I was 4 years of age. So I say to my mother, who's this fella?
If driveway dawn services have shown us anything, it's that it doesn't matter how or where you choose to commemorate, it's with who that really counts. A chance for community to come together and embrace the ANZAC spirit of mateship.
This is a traditional Gallipoli Teamsters gunfire breakfast.
Free pouring rum with a dash of milk. What's the verdict?
The verdict? Well, I'm just tasting it, and I haven't had one of these since 1960. It hasn't changed.
Across the state, many choosing to wait to veranda vigils and makeshift memorials. In Paddington, a solo march for Australian Army veteran Trevor Robinson, preserving our past for future generations. Annie Puller, 9 News.
Well, many of our political leaders were elsewhere this year, but in Canberra, around 20,000 people gathered as lanterns lit up the War Memorial at dawn. A powerful commemorative address given by Malaya, Borneo and Vietnam veteran Mike Ruffin.
We should all be grateful that we live in this lucky country of ours, and this should never be taken for granted.
When daylight came, there was a flyover before veterans began marching past the cenotaph. A time-honoured ANZAC Day tradition is being rekindled across southeast pubs and RSLs. Let's go live to Alex Heinke at Caxton Street. Alex, the punters, have they been trying their hand at the two-up?
Oh, absolutely. The two-up is still continuing, actually. We've just got a spin that's going to be coming for you right now. Coming to you live. Well, the festivities could be continuing for some time, but regardless where you were across the southeast, after paying respect, the party started.
After the commemoration comes the celebration. Servicemen and women, veterans, family, friends, and the respect-paying public, side by side, shoulder to shoulder.
I'm just playing a few putt tunes and just hanging out, have a few beers.
It wasn't the only one at the Brookfield Showgrounds, and there was plenty more enjoying post-dawn service refreshments at the Yeronga RSL. The rain didn't deter visitors, it just pushed them undercover, and one of the unofficial Anzac Day anthems warmed their spirits. Aussies deployed in just about every corner of the globe, sending their well-wishers home, a simple but significant Anzac Day tradition.
I just wanted to give a special shout out to the kids of Chapel Hill Primary School in Brisbane.
Now, of all the traditions followed on the 25th of April, this is one that is illegal on every other day of the year. Of course, I'm talking about the famed and fabled 2-up.
Yes, nice.
Heads win! Heads or tails?
Tails, tails, tails,
It's a simple question that's not easy to get right, but it pays when you do.
They have cleaned up. They cleaned me out, but they cleaned up. I choose heads because you get to hold the money anyways.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where or how we commemorate. What matters is why. Alex Heike, 9 News.
Well, on the other side of the globe, at Villers-Bretonneux, hundreds of people gathered at the Australian National Memorial to remember the diggers who died on the Western Front.
It was here in France that the 5 divisions of the Australian Army, fighting together for the first time, fought with courage and conviction to help blunt the enemy offensive and turn the tide of the war.
10,719 Australians lost their lives in France. In London, people stood shoulder to shoulder at Hyde Park Corner and laid wreaths of poppies. The dawn service included music from a military band and a group from New Zealand performing the haka. A ceremony will be held at the cenotaph in a few hours. Australians and New Zealanders have gathered at ANZAC Cove in Gallipoli for a moving dawn service to honour the sacrifice made there 107 years ago.
Waves lap the shores of Gallipoli as Australians roll in. After 2 years of cancelled services, it's good to be back.
It's a rite of passage for most Australians, I think, to be here at least once in their life.
These Melbourne mates, the first to claim prime positions.
It's pretty amazing to think that 107 years ago this is where Australian and New Zealand troops landed.
A century-old sacrifice today honoured by our country's oldest cultures. The dawn greeted with the sound of a didgeridoo.
The passage of time does not erode the tragedy of what occurred at ANZAC Cove or the significance it has for both our nations.
For those here this morning, these smaller numbers meant a more intimate service, a chance for sombre reflection away from the usual crowded sight. This is the coast where so many young men first experienced the horrors of war, and 8,700 Australians died.
The Anzacs came under a torrent of fire. Shrapnel shells burst overhead. Machine gun and rifle fire came from the front and the flanks.
Lachlan Graham's great-grandfather landed on the beach here at Gallipoli. He was shot in the forehead, but returned to fight after he recovered.
He was a hero. He denied being a hero. But John Marshall Graham was my great-grandfather's name. He was a hero, and it's an honour to be here and a privilege.
Turkey's message to mourning mothers, first delivered in 1934, recited to the crowd.
Those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives, you are now lying in the soil of a friendly country.
Words that lay the foundation for an enduring friendship.
They have become our sons as well.
We take comfort in knowing that Turkey continues to look after them without regard to nationality and with dignity and honour.
For many, the atrocities unfolding in Ukraine drove home the meaning of this day of remembrance.
In this modern time, with wars around us, it's again another poignant time to appreciate what we have.
You come here and you see this and learn about this, and there we have another situation occurring over there. You know, do you think they'd learn? They don't seem to learn.
And Kari-Anne Greenbank is at ANZAC Cove in Gallipoli for us this evening. Good evening, Kari. Organisers are hoping for a bigger turnout next year.
Good evening, Andrew. Well, they are. It was a really small crowd this year, just over 500 people were in attendance. But organisers were saying this year, 2022, was all about re-establishing the ANZAC tradition here at Gallipoli after 2 years of cancelled services. Next year, they hope, will be about seeing the numbers build back up again. Now, as you can see behind me, the pack down here at the dawn service site is now well and truly underway as a second memorial service is held at that historic site of Lone Pine. Melissa?
Kari, thank you. To the rest of the day's news now, and for the first time in 20 years, a French president has won a second term. Emmanuel Macron fended off the strongest challenge yet from the far right's Marine Le Pen and has vowed to unite a divided France.
A historic landmark, the backdrop for a historic win. The newly re-elected Emmanuel Macron was joyous. His far-right challenger, Marine Le Pen, had cast her vote with confidence.